This one truth will change how you see your life forever, because one choice creates your entire path. If you're looking for motivation, wisdom, and life lessons, take the path of purpose.
How do I deal with social injustice? Social injustice has existed for as long as societies have formed. It manifests in many ways: racism, discrimination, inequality, oppression, but its root is always the same: the failure of people to treat each other with dignity and fairness. History is filled with examples of individuals and movements who stood against injustice, refusing to accept a world where some are privileged while others suffer. The question we must ask ourselves today is not whether social injustice exists, but how we, as individuals, deal with it. To confront social injustice, we must first understand its history. Slavery, colonization, segregation, and systemic discrimination did not disappear overnight. They were challenged by people who refused to be silent. The abolitionist movement fought to end slavery in the United States and Europe. The civil rights movement, led by Martin Luther King Jr., fought against racial segregation and inequality. The women's suffrage movement secured the right to vote for women across the world. In South Africa, Nelson Mandela and the anti-apartheid movement dismantled a system of racial oppression. These movements remind us that change is possible, but only if we take action. One of the first steps in dealing with social injustice is recognizing that silence is complicity. Throughout history, some of the worst atrocities occurred, not just because of the actions of oppressors, but because good people did nothing. When the Holocaust unfolded, many in Europe remained silent. When Jim Crow laws enforced racial segregation in the U.S., many turned a blind eye. When indigenous peoples had their lands and rights stripped away, too few stood with them. If we want to fight social injustice, we must reject indifference. We must be willing to speak up, even when it is uncomfortable. Education is one of the most powerful tools against social injustice. Many oppressive systems have relied on ignorance to maintain power. Slave owners forbade enslaved people from learning to read. Dictatorships control the press to prevent citizens from knowing the truth. Segregationists rewrote history to downplay the suffering of marginalized groups. But knowledge is liberation. When we educate ourselves about history, human rights, and current injustices, we equip ourselves with the power to challenge misinformation and demand change. Another way to deal with social injustice is by using our voices. Protests, speeches, literature, and art have all been used throughout history to expose injustice and inspire change. The speeches of Frederick Douglass helped abolish slavery. The writings of Mahatma Gandhi inspired India's independence movement. The images of Emmett Till's brutal murder ignited the civil rights movement. Social movements are fueled by the courage of those who refuse to be silent. Today, we have more ways than ever to raise awareness: social media, journalism, public speaking. We must use every tool available to challenge injustice when we see it. However, raising awareness is not enough. Action must follow. The Montgomery bus boycott lasted over a year, forcing the U.S. Supreme Court to rule segregation on buses unconstitutional. The March on Washington brought over 250 people together to demand civil rights. The Arab Spring saw people rise against oppressive governments, proving that collective action can shake the foundations of power. History teaches us that social injustice does not disappear simply because we recognize it. It disappears when people organize, mobilize, and refuse to accept the status quo. Economic power is another way to challenge injustice. Many oppressive systems thrive because of financial support. Apartheid in South Africa was weakened by international boycotts. The civil rights movement targeted businesses that enforce segregation, forcing them to change policies. Today, ethical consumerism allows us to support businesses that prioritize human rights and sustainability. Where we spend our money matters. Supporting companies that uphold fair wages, environmental protection, and equality strengthens justice. Refusing to fund exploitative industries weakens oppression. Legal advocacy has also played a crucial role in fighting injustice. The abolition of slavery, the desegregation of schools, marriage equality all were achieved through legal battles. Thurgood Marshall, the first Black Supreme Court justice, used the law to dismantle segregation. Ruth Bader Ginsburg fought gender discrimination through legal precedent. Today, lawyers and activists continue to fight wrongful convictions, defend the rights of marginalized groups, and push for policies that promote fairness. But we do not have to be lawyers to support legal change. We can sign petitions, support human rights organizations, and demand policies that promote justice. Dealing with social injustice also requires resilience. Every movement for justice has faced resistance. Gandhi was imprisoned. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in jail. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. The fight against injustice is never easy. But history shows that perseverance wins. The abolitionists did not give up. The suffragettes did not stop fighting. The civil rights activists did not surrender to fear. If we truly want a just world, we must be prepared for setbacks. We must be willing to keep pushing forward, even when progress seems slow. Compassion and empathy are also essential. Many people who uphold injustice do so because they have been taught to do so. They are products of their environment, influenced by propaganda, fear, and misinformation. Hate cannot drive out hate, only understanding can. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa allowed former oppressors and victims to come together, creating a path for healing. The civil rights movement used nonviolent resistance, showing love in the face of brutality. To defeat injustice, we must not become like the oppressors we oppose. We must lead with empathy, educate those who are misled, and seek reconciliation where possible. Yet, at times, resistance is necessary. History has shown that peaceful protest is powerful. But there are moments when standing firm is required. The American Revolution was a response to oppression. Enslaved people who rebelled against their masters fought for their freedom. The Haitian Revolution was the first successful slave uprising that created an independent black nation. Resistance takes many forms: legal battles, economic pressure, political movements, but the core principle remains the same. Injustice must be challenged, not tolerated. Another crucial part of fighting social injustice is solidarity. No group has achieved justice alone. The Underground Railroad succeeded because people of all races worked together. The LGBTQ rights movement gained momentum when allies supported the cause. The labor rights movement succeeded when workers united against exploitation. Today, we must recognize that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We must support struggles beyond our own, understanding that the fight for one group's rights strengthens the fight for all. Finally, we must recognize that social injustice will never fully disappear. History shows that every time one form of oppression ends, another arises. But that does not mean the fight is hopeless. It means the fight is ongoing. It means that every generation has a duty to continue the work of those who came before. We may not see the full results of our efforts in our lifetime, but progress is built step by step, battle by battle. The world we live in today, with greater rights for women, racial minorities, and marginalized groups, is the result of past generations refusing to accept injustice. It is our duty to do the same for future generations. So how do we deal with social injustice? We refuse to be silent. We educate ourselves and others. We use our voices to expose injustice. We take action through protests, legal battles, and economic choices. We build resilience, knowing the fight is long. We lead with empathy, understanding that change comes through dialogue and education. We stand in solidarity with all who face oppression. And above all, we never give up. The arc of history bends toward justice, but only if we push it forward. The choice is ours. Do we stand by and watch injustice continue? Or do we take up the responsibility to fight for a fairer world? The answer to that question determines not only our future, but the future of generations to come. Let us rise to the challenge and make history not as bystanders, but as change makers. The time for action is now.